Sarah was a 25-year-old young woman with long brown hair and deep brown eyes that exuded a sense of calm and trustworthiness. She lived in a big city trying to build a life for herself. Coming from a troubled family background, Sarah had learned to stand on her own feet at an early age. Since graduating from university, she had been working part-time at a cafe while using her spare time to apply for jobs and prepare for interviews. One day during her shift at the cafe, she was lost in thought, serving customers as usual. Life felt stuck in a monotonous cycle, with every day blending into the next. Just then, an elderly man approached the counter. His worn coat and tired face immediately caught her attention. "Excuse me," he said in a trembling voice. "May I use your phone? I need to make an important call." Without hesitation, Sarah handed him her phone. The man thanked her and dialed a number. A few seconds later, disappointment washed over his face. "Oh no," he muttered, then tried another number, but the result was the same. With a sigh, he closed the phone and handed it back to Sarah. "Is something wrong?" Sarah asked gently. The man nodded, his eyes starting to fill with tears. "I live in a small town," he began. "I came here to visit my son. I fell asleep on the train, and when I woke up, my phone and wallet were gone." His gaze dropped to the floor, his voice quieter now. "I memorized my son's number, but I can't seem to recall it correctly." "Old age," he said, taking a deep breath. Sarah's heart tightened. The man's helplessness reminded her of a lost child. She couldn't just leave him like that. "Maybe we can figure something out," she said kindly but firmly. "If you tell me more about yourself, we might find a clue." The man seemed moved by her genuine concern. He gave a faint smile and nodded. "My name is Albert," he said. "My son's name is Ethan. I think he works somewhere in the city center, but I don't know exactly where." Sarah was determined to help the elderly man, but her shift had just started, and she couldn't afford to risk her job. Her boss was known for being temperamental, and asking for time off during the cafe's busiest hours could lead to trouble. Gently, she took the man's arm and quietly explained her situation. "I can't leave right now," she said softly, glancing over at the stern man behind the counter. "That's my boss, and he won't like it if I ask for a break during rush hour. My shift ends in 2 hours. If you can wait, we'll find Ethan together. Don't worry, I'm here for you." The elderly man nodded in understanding, his lined face softening with relief. "All right," he murmured. Sarah smiled reassuringly. "Now, I need you to pretend to be a customer. Just for the next 2 hours. Sit at one of the tables, and if anyone asks, you're here for coffee. You can order anything you like on me." The man chuckled lightly, playing along. "All right then, let's do this. Are you enjoying the story so far? Don't forget to like this video and hit that subscribe button for more heartfelt tales just like this one." He made his way to a table, and Sarah approached him as though she were taking an order. When he quietly asked for just a glass of water, Sarah felt a pang of sympathy. Who knows how long he's been wandering, she thought. He must be hungry too. And without a wallet, he probably hasn't eaten anything. Without hesitation, she went to the kitchen and asked for a hearty meal to be prepared. When she placed the plate in front of him, his eyes widened in surprise and gratitude. I don't have money to pay for this," he whispered, his voice tinged with embarrassment. Sarah leaned in slightly, whispering back, "You're not paying. This is from me. Just keep it between us, okay?" The man's lips curved into a soft smile. For a moment, his tension seemed to dissolve as he played along with Sarah's little game. It felt like they were sharing a secret mission, and the lightheartedness of it all distracted him from his earlier fear and helplessness. As Sarah watched him eat, she thought to herself, "It's funny. The older we get, the more the child within us seems to come out." After finishing his meal, the man thanked Sarah with a warm smile. She handed him a cup of coffee and casually rang up the bill, slipping the money into the register herself. When her shift finally ended, she stepped out of the cafe and saw the man waiting for her at the corner. As she walked up to him, he grinned and said playfully, "See? No one even suspected a thing." Sarah burst into laughter. "You're a natural," she teased. The man looked at her with heartfelt gratitude. "Thank you for the meal and coffee. When I find my son, I'll pay you back for all of this. And don't you dare say no," he added, wagging a finger in mock sternness. Sarah grinned. "Let's find your son first, then we'll worry about that," she replied, looping her arm through his. They started walking together, their footsteps in sync. For a brief moment, the man's fears and Sarah's countless daily worries faded away. In this small act of kindness, they both found a reprieve from their respective struggles, and it felt like a fleeting moment of peace in an otherwise chaotic world. Sarah kindly asked the old man, Do you know what kind of place your son works at? The old man hesitated and replied, It's a big place, I think. That's all? Sarah asked, raising her eyebrows. The man nodded slightly, looking a little embarrassed. Sarah took a deep breath and continued, Okay, so what did he say on the phone? Where was he supposed to meet you? The old man looked down at the ground and answered softly, He told me to call him when I got off the train and to wait for him there. But I couldn't call him. I waited at the train station for hours, but I didn't see him. So I started walking, and that's how I ended up at the cafe. Sarah frowned, trying to process what she'd just heard. This is going to be nearly impossible, she thought to herself. Then she asked, Have you ever been here before? The man perked up. Oh yes. I've been to his house a few times, but he always picked me up by car and took me straight there. Do you remember anything about the area? What it looked like? Sarah asked again, hopeful. The old man furrowed his brow, clearly trying to recall. After a moment he said, I remember there was a burger place across the street. And a park. I could see kids playing in the park from the balcony. It wasn't much to go on, and the man's embarrassment was palpable. Sensing his discomfort, Sarah quickly reassured him with a playful smile. Well, you're going to get a nice little city tour with me today. The old man managed a faint smile and replied, As long as we find my son. His voice trailed off with a hint of despair. That day Sarah and the old man spent hours wandering the streets. They stopped by every burger joint they could find, with Sarah asking each time, Is this the one? But every time the man shook his head and said, No, this isn't it. Sarah even searched online for more burger places nearby, but there were no others left to check. As the day wore on, both of them grew more tired and frustrated. Finally, the old man stopped and turned to Sarah. I don't think we're going to find him like this, he said sadly. Sarah looked down, visibly upset. I'm so sorry, she said softly. The old man sighed, his voice barely above a whisper. I hate to ask this, but if you could help me get a train ticket back home, I'll find a way to contact Ethan from there. I'll make sure to pay you back, I promise. Are you sure you can do this on your own? Sarah asked, her concern evident. The man straightened up a bit and replied firmly, Absolutely. I just need to get on the train. Sarah glanced at the clock. It was getting late, and she knew she couldn't let this tired, elderly man navigate the train station alone at this hour. Okay then, she said, making a decision. You'll stay with me tonight. Tomorrow morning we'll go to the train station first thing and get your ticket. I'll give you my phone number so you can call me when you get home. The old man nodded but looked down, guilt written all over his face. I'm such a burden to you, he muttered apologetically. Sarah waved off his comment with a grin. Nonsense. You're practically my friend now. Besides, I had fun today. The man chuckled softly and they made their way to the bus stop. When they got off near Sarah's place, she led him to her modest little apartment. Inside, the old man looked around quietly. The apartment was small, simple, and unassuming, but it was clear to him that Sarah had faced her own share of struggles. Still, her warm hospitality and determination to help a stranger had made his burdens feel a little lighter. Meanwhile, Sarah, though exhausted, felt a rare sense of fulfillment. A small act of kindness had connected two strangers and reminded them both of the power of human connection. The next morning, Sarah woke up to faint noises coming from the kitchen. She got out of bed, stretched, and walked to the living room. To her surprise, she found the old man in the kitchen, busy preparing something. Good morning, Sarah said, her voice still groggy from sleep. The old man turned to her with a warm smile. Good morning, Sarah. But I have to say, you don't eat very healthy, do you? Sarah laughed lightly, rubbing her eyes. I don't have much time for it, she replied. Taking advantage of the moment, the old man asked Sarah a few questions about her life. As she shared snippets of her struggles and challenges, the old man listened intently, his expression softening with every word. He was deeply moved by the hardships Sarah had endured, but what impressed him even more was her resilience. Despite everything she had faced, Sarah was kind, strong, and self-sufficient, a truly remarkable young woman. After a quick and simple breakfast, the two set off towards the bus stop. The old man held onto Sarah's arm as they boarded the bus, his eyes wandering to the window as the city passed by. He watched the streets with quiet curiosity, but then suddenly his face lit up with excitement. Sarah. That's it, that's the park, he exclaimed, pointing eagerly out the window. Sarah glanced at the park he was pointing to and quickly pressed the button for the next stop. Okay, stay calm, she said, trying to keep the old man steady as the bus slowed down. Once off the bus, they walked towards the park. Sarah looked around, scanning the area. But there's no burger place here, she said, confused. The old man squinted, then pointed to a restaurant across the street. They must have changed it. That used to be the burger joint. Sarah nodded in understanding. Makes sense, she muttered to herself. It had likely been a long time since the old man had last visited. They were now in a rather upscale neighborhood. Sarah couldn't help but think to herself, his son must have a really good job to live here. This area is way out of most people's budget. Turning back to the old man, Sarah asked, "Do you know which building?" The old man took a moment, then turned to face the playground behind him. "That one," he said, pointing to a charming brick apartment building. Sarah studied the building for a moment before asking, "Do you know which floor?" "Yes," the old man said confidently. "The top floor." The two crossed the street carefully and made their way to the building. Standing at the entrance, Sarah glanced at the names listed by the buzzers. Her eyes landed on Ethan Clark. That name, it sounded familiar. Sarah furrowed her brow, trying to place it. Before she could think too much, the old man pressed the button. The door buzzed open immediately and they stepped into the elevator. As they rode to the top floor, Sarah racked her brain trying to figure out where she had heard that name before. When the elevator doors opened, a man in sweatpants was standing by the door, his expression a mix of worry and relief. "Ethan," the old man cried, stepping forward quickly. "I got lost. Someone took my things." His words tumbled out in a rush as he embraced his son tightly. Ethan wrapped his arms around his father, his voice soothing. "It's okay, Dad. You're safe now." As Sarah watched their reunion, something clicked in her memory. Ethan Clark, she knew him. He was one of the managers of a major women's fashion brand. Sarah had seen him countless times at the cafe where she worked. He often came in for coffee and the other staff, especially the waitresses, would always gossip about him. "Mr. Clark," they would whisper excitedly, nudging each other in the kitchen. Everyone admired him, the handsome, successful, and slightly mysterious customer who seemed to catch everyone's attention. And now here she was, standing in his home, witnessing this emotional moment. Life had an uncanny way of connecting people in the most unexpected ways. The old man quickly introduced Sarah to Ethan, his voice filled with gratitude. "This young lady took care of me, let me stay at her place and helped me when I had no one else. We owe her so much, Ethan." Sarah, feeling a little embarrassed, waved it off. "Oh, please, anyone would have done the same," she said modestly. Ethan, who had spent the entire night worried sick about his father and searching for him, looked at Sarah with genuine appreciation. "Thank you for everything. Please come inside for a coffee," he said, gesturing toward the door. Sarah felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. Glancing at her watch, she gave a small, apologetic smile. "I'd love to, but I really have to get to work." She turned to the old man and added playfully, "It was wonderful meeting you. You've got my number, so don't hesitate to call me if you need help with another secret mission." She winked and the old man chuckled, his eyes a little misty. "Thank you, Sarah. At least let us cover your expenses," he offered sincerely. But Sarah shook her head with a warm smile. "It's really not necessary. Take care of yourself, okay?" she said, pressing the elevator button. She waved one last time as the doors closed, heading off to her shift, leaving Ethan and his father standing in the hallway, watching her with admiration. A few days later, Sarah was busy at work when Ethan walked into the cafe, catching her by surprise. Her co-workers immediately started whispering excitedly as he approached her at the counter. "Hi, Sarah," he said, smiling. "I just wanted to thank you again for helping my dad." "Oh, it was nothing," Sarah replied, trying to sound casual but feeling her cheeks flush. Ethan paused for a moment before continuing. "I was wondering, would you let me take you out to dinner? As a proper thank you." Sarah blinked, caught off guard. But as she looked into Ethan's kind and sincere eyes, she found herself nodding. "I'd like that," she said softly, her heart racing. That evening, as they shared stories over dinner, Sarah realized that helping the old man had done more than bring a father and son back together, it had also given her the chance to open a new chapter in her own life. As their dinner came to an end, Ethan hesitated for a moment, then looked directly at Sarah. "You know," he began, his tone thoughtful, "my dad couldn't stop talking about you. He told me how kind and resourceful you were, how you stayed with him when he was at his lowest and never made him feel like a burden. He said you reminded him of the kind of person I should aspire to be." Sarah's cheeks turned a shade of pink, her fingers nervously tracing the rim of her glass. "That's really sweet of him to say. Your dad is an amazing person. I just did what anyone would have done." Ethan shook his head with a slight smile. "No, Sarah. Most people wouldn't have gone out of their way like you did. And honestly, after hearing all of that, I couldn't stop thinking about you. I'd like to get to know you better. Sarah's eyes widened slightly, surprised by his honesty, but his words felt genuine and warm. He leaned in a little closer. My dad's already planning ways to have you visit the town where he lives. He keeps saying how much you'd love it there, and frankly, I think he's right. So what do you say? Maybe one day you can come and see it for yourself. Sarah smiled, her heart feeling light. I'd like that, she replied softly. And as they stepped out into the cool evening air, it was clear that this wasn't just the end of a dinner, it was the beginning of something far more meaningful for both of them. Sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness lead to the most unexpected and beautiful outcomes. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If you loved this story, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more inspiring and emotional tales. Your support means the world to us.